Hi, we're here with Kathy Mussio and Amy Gerber, and we're talking about incentives for the fourth quarter issue of Area Development Magazine. And we just wanted to kick off the discussion and ask you both, how have incentives evolved recently to address the unique needs of different industries? What trends are you guys seeing in the customization of incentives for advanced manufacturing?
Oh, hey, this is Kathy. Andrew, thank you. And Amy, great to be with you. It's not a new thing for governments to pick winners and losers in deciding what types of industry they're going to incentivize, especially lately in the energy space. Think about on a federal level, it's happened over the years in energy. You started with oil and gas, then nuclear, biofuels, solar, other renewables. And obviously, as innovation and technologies come on, there are new sorts of incentives that go along with that. But specific to advanced manufacturing, not sure that there's anything new or different in customization, except that, Amy, you're probably seeing the same thing. States and communities are going to continue to target industries and create programs for the industries they want to attract. In the past few years has been all things supply chain and, of course, energy. And sustainability is also a word that we're hearing more and seeing in the incentive agreements more and more.
Yeah, I agree, Kathy. I think there's two things to look at when it comes to state level incentives. You do have states pursuing certain industries. If you think about some of the most notable, like Tennessee pursuing the nuclear industry with their new nuclear incentive. You have Virginia with wind-related incentives, other states pursuing solar. And what's interesting about that is it really follows lead with a lot of the federal incentives that have been pursued over the years. It wasn't that long ago that we had the initial solar panel funding from the federal government. You started to see states like Mississippi and Virginia create incentive programs around that as well. But if you think about just advanced manufacturing in general, one of the things we have seen states doing is realizing that a lot of these advanced manufacturing facilities are not creating the head count that they used to. So we are seeing certain states evolve their programs to really focus on that capital investment and to incentivize upon that investment versus being more heavily weighted towards the head count.
And as I agree with Amy, and as consultants, what Amy and I like to see, if there are programs that there are different tracks to qualify for that, you can take the job track, you can take the investment track, or you can take a job and investment track, but that companies who want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a project but not create a lot of jobs, is there a path to them receiving assistance for that capital they're spending? And that's key.
Okay, excellent. That makes sense. Now, you guys both talked about sustainability, and Amy, you mentioned a couple of programs like nuclear in Tennessee and Virginia's approach. Have you seen these states adapting their incentives to attract these kind of businesses, and what sort of adaptation have you seen focused on sustainability over the last couple of years?
Yeah, and if we think about sustainability, the adaptation of the incentives is really on the manufacturers of sustainable technology or products versus sustainability of those facilities themselves. Granted, that does exist with things such as incentivizing installation of solar and alternative energy to operate the facility. But most of the revision of these programs or the creation of new programs is for manufacturers of sustainable projects. And they are everything from the nuclear, whether that's nuclear fusion, the SMRs, wind energy, hydro. You see a lot with the hydrogen projects across the country. So it's definitely out there. To be honest, I would like to see more states get involved on attracting those industries specifically, but there still are a good handful that are really realize that's the future, and those type of deals will ultimately help all of their other industries that they're trying to attract.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think, okay, why are companies focusing more on sustainability? And When we think about it, there are a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it might be investor driven, if it's a publicly traded company, or it could be that the private equity firms that own them demand it, or to make themselves more attractive to institutional investors, or it could just be due to the customers because customers have the purchase power. I sound so ancient when I say this, but the younger generation cares more, it seems, about the environment compared to the older generation. I know it's generalization, but the younger generation has massive purchasing power, and they want to buy products from companies who share their values. And that can often mean a company that has a focus on the environment or sustainability.
And here's an interesting thing to think about. As Kathy mentioned, companies have a lot of different drivers for needing to focus and put more effort in sustainability. One of the challenges, though, on the site selection side, especially if we look at utility sustainability and items like that, there are not enough available sites in the markets that probably have the highest sustainability levels. So what you're seeing is companies having to make decisions on which sustainability aspects are the most important when the location they want doesn't have the available land or the workforce or whatever those other drivers are. So you're seeing companies having to make some of these decisions that might contradict their sustainability goals.
100%. And it's interesting because lately, I guess for an increasing number of our industrial projects, we're being asked about the generation mix that are going to be available at each of the sites that are being submitted. And that's nothing new. 10 years ago, we were also asked about generation at sites, but only once in a while. Now it's like all the time. And we're modeling in that generation mix. And more of our clients are considering solar fields, adding them on their property or looking to purchase adjacent property if it's available to see if they can put up solar arrays so that they can go off the grid and be able to make their own energy. And more of our clients are looking to add solar panels on factory roofs. So all this stuff is happening in the broad umbrella of the word sustainability.
Yeah, and all in the name of energy, I think, which is always a big buzzword. But let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about incentives, not for sustainability, but for workforce development, which has been a growing component. How are you guys seeing incentives be more closely tied to workforce development programs, especially in sectors that require specific skills like technology and manufacturing?
I think there's certain states that have really taken the lead in workforce development programs, and for them, it's nothing new. So their transition to some of these new skill sets has really been much easier for them than in some of the other states that, quite honestly, just never had workforce development programs that were usable by a lot of projects. I think of some of the top states that I've worked with that have really excellent workforce development programs. You have to look at Virginia's Talent Accelerator program that really over the years has just continued to grow to address so many other components that are tied to workforce development. You have Georgia Quick Start and Louisiana Fast Start. There's so many of these programs, and there are other states that have finally understood that you can't attract business without having a healthy workforce, and you're seeing partnerships with universities and other higher education facilities to really create some of these programs in the EV industry. Michigan's a great example of that, and more states are starting to get on board.
Yeah, Amy's so right. When Amy mentions Virginia, they've quickly become top 3, but they weren't even on the map for their training programs or what they did with workforce. I don't know, Amy, 4 or 5 years ago, they weren't even on the map. But aside from the Talent Accelerator, which Amy mentioned, when you get an award from Virginia, you can either go the Talent Accelerator route or VGIP, which is another one of their programs, which offers $1,000, I think it's a $1,000 per job grant. But Virginia does it well because they even make the VGIP easy. For $1,000 per job, a company does their own training. and the approved companies into the program just have to hire the jobs, because sometimes states make it hard, make it cumbersome, force companies to work with technical schools in order to do the training. And there's nothing wrong with technical schools. They're great. But not every company wants to do their training at a technical school or wants a trainer from the technical school to be involved in their proprietary machinery and training. And like with training incentives, it's interesting. Many states have multiple buckets that can be piggybacked with one another to provide dollars for training. So it's not just like one program per state. There might be a program for training new jobs. There might be another one for incumbent worker training, which is retraining, or a program that does both. The key point is that there are multiple sources of funds that a company can tap into to assist in all different types of training, and sometimes for the life of the facility.
And Kathy makes a really good point with the flexibility of Virginia's. A lot of the projects that are being announced and that we're all working on are from startup or pre-revenue companies that may not have a large workforce. There are a lot of these programs that have minimum job creation requirements by skill set. And if you have a startup company that may only have a handful of each employee in different skill sets, that's not going to be big enough for some of these bigger programs in order to support those efforts. So giving the company that flexibility to support them in a different capacity is really important.
And sometimes programs that will work with you throughout the years. There are training funds in certain states. Yes, they're limited, maybe $25,000 a year annually or $50,000 a year annually, but the programs exist and can be tapped into every year or sometimes every 2 years to help a company with the training once the initial ramp up is done. Because having funds for the ramp up period is great, but you're a manufacturer, you're going to expand a facility. Let's say you're going to build a new facility and you hire, say, 300 production workers. They aren't all going to stay. You're going to have to backfill some positions, and the process won't stop after 1 or 2 years. It's an ongoing thing. So there's always training that's going to need to occur for a manufacturer to operate.
We're curious if either of you are seeing a shift in some of the incentives that favor creating so-called good jobs that offer higher living wages and benefits, and more so than just like a high number of jobs per facility. Have you seen incentives that are trying to push this shift?
So a shift to higher wage jobs?
Yeah, exactly.
Every state, every community, they all want to attract projects that have high wage, higher impact jobs. Every community wants the creation of good jobs. And in fact, sometimes you have a project which you consider it having good jobs because it has manufacturing wages equal to the average manufacturing wage in that county. But the county might say back to you, we're really looking for higher wage, higher impact jobs. So that for some communities, especially some communities that have seen a lot of success, they're getting much more targeted in the jobs they want to attract. Like it's hard these days to get good incentives for straight distribution projects if the wages aren't equal to the county average wage, or forget it, if they're below the county average wage, you're in a lot of cases going to be turned down.
And here's the challenge, and to Kathy's point, I understand the driver to incentivize higher wage positions because as an economic developer, you're looking to increase the wage for the whole location that you're in, whether that's the city, the county, or the state. One of the challenges is that there are certain positions that are lower skilled, that require a lot of training, that if the company is going to take on that burden of doing those activities in order to train that workforce, you're not necessarily going to pay those employees a maximum wage at hire. And so what I think states and cities need to look at is how that position evolves over time as that new hire is trained and develops a bigger skill set and goes on to grow within the company. I'm a firm believer that wage issues resolve themselves. If the county or city can't support or the employer can't find workforce in that location at a certain dollar value, or they have really high turnover, they're going to correct that and start to increase their wages until they get the quality of employee that they're looking for. So what I hate to see is when a community simply decides not to support a project because of the wage, when I firmly believe that would solve itself once that project is established and begins hiring.
That's true. If you're a 25th percentile payer in these days, good luck finding people who want to come work for you, and good luck keeping them.
And you have a lot of companies right now that are looking at becoming second chance employers, which is a really good thing for everybody. Sometimes when you go that route, as an employer, you have more risk. And so there needs to be a second set of criteria in some cases where I think it's important to look at the benefits, the type of position, and the other wrapping services that these companies provide, and not look at just the wage.
Yeah, also there are some programs that allow you different ways to meet the wage threshold. So let's say you're in a county that has a high county average wage. Don't just have your basic manufacturing job have to meet that high county average wage. Offer another way to do it, which is maybe like Illinois with their REV program. You can use BLS data to try to meet the average county wage, or you can use the Illinois Department of Employer Services for the county and look at each occupational wage for the positions you're hiring and have to meet a percentage of a specific occupational wage. That's flexibility.
Very good. Amy, I'm glad that you mentioned those kind of like alternative places to look for employment. We're running a nice story in our workforce section in this issue on just that thing. So it's a nice call out for it.
I will just say, when we talk about workforce shortages, I don't believe that we have a workforce shortage for the most part. I think it's that we're not getting creative enough at all the different types of workers that are out there.
For sure. Yep.
That's a great way to say it. We're running a little bit long on this segment, so I think I'll jump to the last question here and give you guys both a chance. You're in the field often, but if you could change one aspect of the current economic development incentive landscape, what would it be and why?
We can just choose one.
Yeah, limited.
Okay, I'll go first. One thing I would change is probably has to do with when a project needs to be publicly known in order to get through the approval process. There's sometimes a mismatch between when a company is willing to have their name be disclosed and what a community needs in their readings or their approval process to have the company's name disclosed. So before an announcement is made, typically a company has to disclose the name of their company in order to get the final approval. That makes sense because you're using public dollars. And it's fine if it gets approved first in executive session and the company can stay under a code name for the project for the first reading and the first council meeting. But that's the challenge because it's a chicken and egg thing in a different way because the company doesn't want their name out there, but you need to get the name out there to get the final approval. I don't know exactly how I make that into one sentence, but it would be having to do with public disclosure of a company's name before the company is ready to publicly disclose their name, but yet be able to get the incentive approvals done.
So I'm going to stick along similar thoughts that Kathy had. The biggest pain point we see right now is the timeline to obtain incentive approval. We are in this position where finding the ideal real estate option that meets all the labor, utility, cost requirements, they're so thin that it's really important that we make sure we don't lose that real estate deal in the time it takes for us to get through an incentive transaction. Now, there's some states and locations that are very efficient, but there's others where it could take 90 plus days to get that done. If we wait that long to do that, there's no way we're going to keep that desired real estate option intact. So right now it just feels like there's a big mismatch between timing on the real estate side and then timing on the incentive side.
It's so true. And just to add one thing to what Amy just said, sometimes there are states or communities that allow for a but-for language in a lease or a land sale transaction, but not every seller or developer or landlord is willing to put a but-for clause in there, which would essentially pretty much protect the deal in case the land sale happens or the development deal or lease gets signed prior to all of the incentive approvals being done. So, yeah, Amy, it's so funny that we both are basically saying it's a timing thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Timing is everything. And unfortunately, ours is coming to an end. I just wanted to say thank you very much, Kathy and Amy, for taking time for us today. And this has been a really wonderful discussion, and look out for it online.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, Andrew.